This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. The mother of the teenager who was killed in Carman on the weekend is grieving and speaking out. She believes child welfare authorities ignored her concerns about safety, placing her daughter in a potentially dangerous situation. She told her story to the CBC's Karen Pauls.
I should have fought harder. I'm so sorry.
A mother's pain. The loss of her firstborn daughter in horrible circumstances, made worse because Juliet Hastings says it all could have been prevented.
Something dark was just festering, and I just didn't want my daughter to be caught in the crossfire.
Maya's body was found Sunday in a home in a small rural Manitoba community. She lived there with her foster cousin, 30-year-old Amanda Clearwater, who was found dead in a ditch earlier that morning. The bodies of Clearwater's 3 children were pulled from a burning car not long after. Clearwater's partner, Ryan Manokisic, accused of killing them.
Hastings said Maya moved in with Clearwater and Manokisic after an argument last spring. Hastings grew up with Clearwater, but she was worried about Manokisic, who is on bail and on court-ordered treatment for mental health and addictions.
They didn't do any safety checks. They didn't do any criminal record checks. The system didn't work at all. They didn't do their job.
Winnipeg Child and Family Services wouldn't comment, deferring questions to the provincial government. The Premier says he can't comment on specific cases.
But we also have a responsibility as government when terrible things like this happen in our province to ask the question, what went wrong? And more importantly, how are we going to fix it? How are we going to protect children, protect women, protect young people?
Hi, my name is Maya and this is my story.
Hastings says she's just trying to remember Maya as her bubbly, happy girl who had a strong faith and loved her family.
I've noticed I'm getting along with my family a lot better than before.
She cherishes a text from Maya the day she was killed.
How much she loves me and how much she is sorry that she didn't show her appreciation before for me.
Opportunities now lost forever.
But I just want to see my baby. I want to hold her.
Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The family of 59-year-old Bradley Singer is identifying him as the man who was fatally shot by Winnipeg police Tuesday. CBC News is not releasing a photo of Singer at the family's request. Police say they got an order last week under the Mental Health Act to take a 59-year-old man to hospital for an involuntary doctor's examination. When officers found the man at a home on Magnus Avenue, police say he was agitated, barricaded himself in a bedroom, and eventually confronted police with an edged weapon. That's when police say officers discharged their firearms. A spokesperson for Singer's family says they don't want to comment publicly until the independent investigation unit finishes its investigation. 5 people have died following interactions with Winnipeg police in recent months. The city's mayor told CBC Radio today he has questions about how officers handle mental health-related calls.
It is a concern, and absolutely it's a concern when we see individuals who are struggling in a mental health crisis, whatever the case may be, and they end up, because through the interaction with the police service, they lose their lives. It's tragic. Nobody wants it. You heard the deputy chief talk about, acting chief Stander talk about, even the police don't want it. I believe him on that.
Scott Gillingham says the topic will be discussed at the next police board meeting in March. The NDP government's election promise to hire hundreds more healthcare workers got a shot in the arm today. The Prime Minister was in Winnipeg to announce his government will inject $600 million into the province's efforts to fix the healthcare system. CBC's Ian Fraze has details.
The Prime Minister is shaking hands with future healthcare workers and stressing he's on their side.
Just have to make sure we're giving you the supports to be able to, yes, work hard, all shift, but come off it feeling, okay, I made a difference.
Afterwards, Justin Trudeau promised more than $630 million to support the healthcare system these graduates will be joining.
But we have to be honest with ourselves. It can be too hard to access a family doctor or a nurse practitioner. Emergency rooms are too often overwhelmed. People are waiting for the surgeries they need.
Manitoba's become the 7th province to sign on to a healthcare funding agreement with the feds. The province will get an extra $1.2 billion over 10 years. On Thursday, a third of that money was earmarked. Some of the funds will help Wabkanu's government uphold an election promise.
It means we can move on with our commitment, which we call our 4-3-2-1 plan. 400 more physicians, 300 more nurses in the city, 300 more nurses rurally, 200 more paramedics, and 100 more home care workers.
That promise now becomes a string attached to this deal. Manitoba must make progress to trigger funding in future years.
We're taking a really aggressive approach to trying to get this accomplished, and so we'd love to blow past those targets.
Doctors Manitoba appreciates that Ottawa is putting up conditions.
We like to see some accountability and transparency when it comes to how this money is spent and whether it is meeting targets. That always hasn't been the case in the past.
Manitoba also signed another federal agreement that helps home care and long-term care facilities. The province will get $200 million over 5 years.
It is fundamental to us being able to say that we are a society that treats the people who raised us with the dignity and respect that they deserve.
Hiring more staff isn't the only condition on Manitoba's share of the money. At the end of last year, 10% of ER patients were waiting more than 6.5 hours for care. The goal is to have that wait drop by more than 2 hours in the next 2 years. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg police are investigating a homicide that happened just before 3 this morning. Officers were called to Magnus Avenue between Aikens and Salter by a report of armed men in a rooming house there. Several officers and the police helicopter went to the area. 3 suspects were seen running from the building. 1 had a gun. All were arrested without incident. Police then found the body of a man in one of the suites. A federal minister's comments about road funding sparked concern at Winnipeg City Hall. Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault said earlier this week that the federal government would not fund new road projects. He and the Prime Minister have both since clarified those comments, walking them back. But as CBC's Cameron McLean reports, people in Winnipeg are still wondering what's ahead for some of the city's biggest projects.
That's not what I said.
Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault backtracked from comments he made at an event in Montreal on Monday. According to a newspaper, he said, "Our government has made the decision to stop investing in new road infrastructure. There will be no more envelopes from the federal government to enlarge the road network." That led to backlash from other political leaders. His office issued a statement saying he only meant large road projects, specifically a multi-billion-dollar tunnel to Quebec City. But Janice Lukes, chair of Winnipeg's Public Works Committee, says the comments raise questions about Ottawa's priorities.
Winnipeg is a multimodal global transportation hub. We need to move goods.
The city is working on building a business case for 2 massive road projects: the widening of Kenaston Boulevard and the extension of Chief Peguis Trail, both of which depend on federal funding.
The initial comment, as I heard it, is out of touch with our reality of what we need in the city of Winnipeg and in cities across the country.
But Mark Coho, executive director of Bike Winnipeg, would like to see the feds move away from car infrastructure.
But it also makes our city more sustainable in terms of our taxation, in terms of what we have to maintain in our roadways, and in terms of what we can gather back in our taxes. So I think this is really positive.
St. Boniface councillor Matt Allard has been a vocal critic of both the Kenaston and Chief Peguis projects.
Once we stop building net new roads, we're going to start focusing on the solutions, because building net new roads doesn't solve traffic.
Allard says it would also free up money to maintain the roads the city already has. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A massive sewage leak near the Fort Garry Bridge continues to spill into the Red River. Raw sewage spilled from a broken pipe at the Abinogi-Mickinaw River crossing starting February 7th. That leak continued for a week. City crews got part of a bypass system up and running around 7:30 yesterday evening, but that fix has since failed. The city says so far 175 million litres of untreated sewage has spilled into the Red. Police say no charges will be laid in the case of AI-generated nude photos that circulated at a Winnipeg school. Students at Collège Boliveau, I'm saying that wrong, I apologize. A grade 7 to 12 French immersion school in the city's Windsor Park area reported the images to school officials in December. The original photos appear to have been gathered from social media and then explicitly altered using artificial intelligence. According to the police spokesperson, many things can factor into the decision not to lay charges, including the victim's desire to move forward with the case. Constable Danny McKinnon went on to say that the service understands everyone involved is satisfied with this final decision. A year and a half ago, Peguis First Nation acquired some of the most desirable residential land in Winnipeg. The new chief of Peguis wants to know why that land was flipped to a private developer. CBC's Bartley Kivas brings us this story.
This is 611 Wellington Crescent, nearly 3 acres of riverfront land in one of Winnipeg's most desirable residential neighbourhoods. There was a rehab centre for children here until 2016. A few years later, the province decided it no longer needed this property, so it offered it up to 5 First Nations eligible to acquire property under the Treaty Land Entitlement process. That process is intended to compensate First Nations that never received their fair share of land. According to the province, Peguis First Nation, the most populous First Nation in Manitoba, was the only interested buyer for this land. In 2022, the province sold 611 Wellington Crescent to a numbered company controlled by Peguis First Nation Real Estate Trust. 6 months later, the Real Estate Trust sold the company to a private developer. That developer has plans to build 14 luxury bungalows on the site. Stan Bird was elected chief of Peguis First Nation 2 months after the land was bought and sold.
Well, I feel a bit angry about that. Our community was left in the dark. We're just hearing bits and pieces of, some of the sales that have happened in the past.
Bird said he's upset land that was purchased under the Treaty Land Entitlement process was sold instead of getting added to Peguis Reserve lands.
Very upset. Land is important to our people. Land for our people is not a commodity. Our land is very much tied to our culture, and without that, we don't have an identity, and I believe that that's one of the reasons our people continue to struggle.
Struggle over land is not new to Peguis. Its reserve used to encompass fertile agricultural fields around St. Peter's, near Selkirk. But in 1907, the community was swindled out of that land and pushed onto its current reserve on a floodplain in the northern Inner Lake.
But I remember the floodwaters coming up just below the school there. This is the old school, the rec center.
Here, the nation has struggled. Many members have left or have been forced out of their homes because of repeated flooding along the Fisher River and financial troubles that include lawsuits for unpaid loans. Bird says Peguis has to contemplate the meaning of land.
It's not about money. It's much more than that. And the fact that the lands that we owned, that we were swindled out of and moved into this community.
Bird says he's investigating the sale and resale of this land. The province sold 611 Wellington Crescent for $350,000, a price it said was based on a fair market value appraisal conducted 5 years before. The province wouldn't release that appraisal, but stated that appraisal took into account the need to demolish the old rehab center, remove hazardous material, and stabilize the riverbank. Bob M. Timniak is a broker with Capital Commercial Real Estate in Winnipeg. He called the sale price for 3 acres of Wellington Crescent land ridiculously low, even with the state of the property.
I think that this land ought to be probably worth at least $1.5 million an acre, likely more.
We asked Timniak how many parties would have been interested in buying that land for $350,000.
I think there would be a list of developers longer than you could think of in the next 5 minutes. that would have interest in doing that. Yeah, it'd be a very, very desirable piece of property, especially for that price.
Winnipeg developer Andrew Marquis advised Peguis on the 611 Wellington purchase. He commissioned an appraisal that pegged the value of the land at $1.8 million. CBC News asked Marquis if he thought the $350,000 sale price was fair.
I'm not sure it's a fair question given, all the other factors of, the province's role and relationship with Indigenous communities.
Winnipeg lawyer Yvonne Larocque, an expert in treaty land entitlement, says selling land below market value can serve as economic reconciliation.
It's the prerogative of the Crown to make those decisions, and obviously every case is different.
According to the Peguis First Nation Real Estate Trust, the company that owns 611 was sold for $2.8 million. Its website pegged the profit on the sale at $1.8 million. A financial statement showed the profit at closer to $1.4 million. Larocque said there's nothing preventing a First Nation from acquiring property under the treaty land entitlement process and then selling it instead of developing it.
And so if there's a benefit to the nation and the members by selling a piece of land rather than adding it to reserve or developing it, I think it's the prerogative of the nation to make that decision.
One of the trustees for Peguis First Nation Real Estate Trust said he doesn't understand why Chief Stan Bird is questioning the decision to buy and sell the land.
To acquire it and then to sell it, I don't know what the issue with profit is on it. It's just a normal business deal, right? There's nothing that's different from any other business deal.
Stevenson said he's tried to meet with Bird to no avail.
This here, like I said, is this area over here.
Stan Bird said he only wants to know why Peguis First Nation is once again missing out on land, in this case, highly desirable land purchased on the cheap.
It put us in a really good position, but again, that was taken away. So my question is why?
Stan Bird ran for office on a promise to make Peguis's finances more transparent. Right now, he says, his community has been left in the dark. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
It is day 2 of Trappers Fest in the Paw. Today's events tested competitors' physicality, from axe throwing to pole climbing. But the biggest challenge was who could be the best moose or goose caller. Here's more from CBC Indigenous video producer Kevin Nipatebo.
I think it kind of gets inside of you and it's hard to get it out. So it's a good group of guys too to come back and see every year and compete with.
It's a great atmosphere. It's a fun 5 filled days, and we hear nothing but praises and how it's run, and the competitors love it and they keep coming back.
I've been competing for since I was 12 years old, so over 30 years, and juniors, and then I competed in Junior Kings for about 4 years and won it a couple times, and then when I was too old for juniors, I started competing in the King Trappers when I was 18. Yeah, so I'm still at her.
That's all I get.
Trappers Fest, the oldest winter festival in Manitoba. Another winter festival starts tomorrow. I wonder what our weather will be like for Festival. Ethan Williams joins us now with a look at the forecast.
Well, thanks, Janet. And you are looking at some of the coldest daytime high temperatures that we have seen in Manitoba, especially in southern Manitoba. In almost a month, we have been spoiled by that warm weather as of late. And yeah, this feels a little chilly today. And it's pretty chilly, you know, when you compare it even to yesterday's daytime highs. We've dropped some 10 degrees in much of the southern half of the province, by as much as 15 degrees in portions of the north after a cold front slid through there overnight. And you factor in a little bit of wind, and it's earlier this afternoon feeling down into the minus 20s for Winnipeg and much of the Inner Lake, closer to minus 40 as you head along the Hudson Bay coast and along the northern border of the province. And what's of course driving those wind chills, a little bit of wind picking up here and there. We're going to continue to see that at times overnight tonight. Picking up a little bit here and there, probably in the 30 to 40 range through much of the province, but those really start going, especially in western sections along the Parkland region and into the Inner Lake as we get later into tomorrow evening as a bit of a system starts moving through. And even early Saturday morning could see gusts as close as 50 closer to the international border. So high pressure has kept things a little bit more clear, especially in western sections today. We start to see a little bit of snow moving through tomorrow morning. This is that system that's going to pick up those winds a bit. It reaches the Winnipeg area and southeastern Manitoba by the time we get into the early evening hours tomorrow. And then for Saturday, things start to clear out a little bit in western sections, lingering cloud cover for the Red River Valley, the north and the Hudson Bay coast picking up a little bit more snow. How much? Well, those couple of systems could total up to 5 to 7 centimeters, kind of in a stretch here from the border with Nunavut down into the border with northwestern Ontario. Other than that, we're really not expecting too much accumulation. Even in the Winnipeg area, not much expected to be picked up. Now, in terms of tomorrow morning, a cold start after a chilly day, minus 23, but feeling like minus 30 with the wind chill. We're keeping the mostly sunny skies around as we head toward the noon hour, but still, even at that, we're only getting to around minus 16. About minus 8 is our usual daytime high for this time of year. Into the afternoon, we'll get to about minus 12. That's about the best we'll do. Clouds starting to increase a bit as that system gets closer to us and those winds picking up as well. So other than that, after we get through tomorrow, temperatures improving, especially for Saturday. Still going to be a bit gusty with some lingering cloud cover, and then that breaks away on Sunday as our temperatures drop down a bit. I'll have a look at your full provincial forecast, Janet, coming up.
Thanks very much, Ethan. Well, it's one of the many things Manitoba prides itself on, being the polar bear capital of the world. For decades, scientists from around the world have traveled to Churchill to study our polar bears. And of course, with climate change, those bears have been watched more and more closely. Some scientists now have growing concern that dwindling sea ice is pushing some polar bears close to starvation. Using cameras and GPS, researchers effectively traveled with the bears as they searched for food. And as Nicole Mortellero shows us, what they saw was alarming.
Long regarded as an icon of the North, polar bears now face ever bigger challenges from declining sea ice in a rapidly changing climate. A new study led by the U.S. Geological Survey reveals what some are up against. Using high-res color cameras that allowed researchers to almost see through the bears' own eyes. They tracked 20 of them near Churchill, Manitoba, to see how they fared with less sea ice. Forced to spend more time on land means hunting and eating fewer fatty seals, the bears' main food source, resulting in significant weight loss and drops in energy levels. The study found that without those crucial calories, some bears chose to do very little, practically hibernating and living off their fat reserves, while others tried to feed off berries, plants, or birds. One bear even swam a total of 175 kilometers in Hudson Bay, resting briefly on the floating carcass of a beluga whale she tried to eat. But overall, the food the bears consumed didn't make up for the energy they spent while foraging.
I think what our study was really getting at was what are the limitations to polar bears' ability to adapt. And I think that's what we found, was that they had all of these different behaviors and a lot of energetic strategies, and none of that was able to prevent weight loss. So that just suggests they do have some limitations.
Researchers determined that some bears had enough fat reserves to survive until the end of November when the sea ice begins to reform in Hudson Bay. But some might not make it that long.
The bears are doing what they've always done, whatever bag of tricks they've had, and they've been using them for probably thousands and thousands of years. It's not going to be enough.
While not all polar bear populations face the same threats, all are classified as a species of special concern in Canada, mainly due to the loss of sea ice. The question that remains is, will this highly resilient species be able to further adapt to the rapidly changing Arctic environment? Nicole Mortellero, CBC News, Toronto.
Israeli troops raided the main hospital in southern Gaza today in search of hostages. How the international community is responding after the break. Israeli troops raided the main hospital in southern Gaza today. The military said it had credible intelligence Hamas was holding hostages there. CBC's Abby Kuavasan reports.
The largest hospital in southern Gaza has been raided by the Israeli troops. The IDF ordered the facility to be evacuated of displaced civilians 2 days ago. Today it moved in with special forces. A doctor there told the Associated Press that one patient has died and several others were injured in the operation. Social media video shows chaotic scenes and gunfire can be heard in the background.
We have credible intelligence from a number of sources, including from released hostages, indicating that Hamas held hostages at the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis, and that there may be bodies of our hostages in the Nasser hospital facility.
Israel accuses Hamas of hiding among civilians and using medical facilities. International law experts say even if that was the case, Israel has an obligation to protect civilian infrastructure. Human Rights Watch says the IDF's repeated attacks on hospitals and ambulances must be investigated as war crimes. South of Khan Yunis, there are concerns about an IDF ground incursion into Rafah, where 1.4 million Palestinians, many who've been displaced multiple times already, are sheltering. Canada, Australia and New Zealand have now issued a trilateral statement calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, deeply concerned about the impact on civilians if IDF troops enter Rafah. They say Palestinian civilians cannot be made to pay the price for defeating Hamas.
Large-scale military operations in densely populated areas risks extensive civilian casualties. Australia believes this would be unjustifiable. Our message to Israel is listen to the world, do not go down this path.
Since Hamas's attacks on Israel on October 7th, the IDF has rescued 3 hostages. More than 28,500 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza. The United Nations says many are women and children. Now, more than 20 Arab nations are looking to call for an immediate ceasefire at the UN Security Council. The U.S., with its veto power, has already said it will oppose the draft resolution, arguing it would hurt ongoing negotiations to pause the war. Abby Koalas, CBC News, London.
Well, speaking of the U.S., Donald Trump's first criminal trial will get underway on March 25th. In a New York trial today, a judge dismissed Trump's motion to have the case tossed out. Now, this case surrounds money paid to adult film actress Stormy Daniels 7 years ago. Our Chris Reyes has more.
Just as Trump's indictment last April on this case was a historic one, making him the first American president to face criminal charges, today's decision just as noteworthy as it sets into motion the first of 4 criminal cases that Donald Trump is charged in. March 25 will be jury selection. That decision handed down very quickly by Judge Juan Merchan. Soon after, he denied the motion to dismiss this case altogether made by Trump's attorneys. And despite repeated objections from Trump's lawyers, the judge put his foot down and very quickly attended to the logistics of the trial in March. There was a lot of discussion about how to choose an impartial jury, given the media attention that surrounds Donald Trump and the unprecedented nature of trying a former American president. Now, while the judge was able to shut down Trump's lawyers inside the courtroom, there was nothing stopping Trump from airing his grievances outside the courtroom.
There was no crime here at all. This is just a way of hurting me in the election because I'm leading by a lot. We're leading by numbers that nobody's ever seen before, and they figured this is their way of cheating this time.
The prosecution pointed out to the judge that Trump repeatedly tries to delay these trials to evade accountability and argued that the fairest way to conduct the trial is to make it quick. This one is expected to last 6 weeks. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
A Canadian mother is sounding the alarm over sexploitation. This issue is close to her heart because her son killed himself after being victimized online. Alexandre Silberman has the story.
William Doiron's mother, Stéphanie Thériault, describes her son as being a ball of energy, refereeing hockey and playing since he was 5 years old. He looked out for kids at his school, she says. On the bus, one of the kids was getting bullied. It was William that helped him. William was a happy 16-year-old, she says. But that all changed after he started chatting with what he thought was a young woman on Snapchat. On October 29, 2022, his family returned home from a hockey game to find William had taken his own life. From what we were able to figure out, he thought he was talking with a young woman, his mother says. She sent sexually explicit photos and asked him to send some in return. He sent photos back, she says. And all this time, it was a criminal network. Thériault eventually learned from the RCMP that William had been a victim of sextortion, a form of financially motivated online blackmail. Police eventually traced the messages back to an organized criminal network in West Africa. She learned the extorter had demanded ransom, threatening to send William's images on Instagram. 3 days later, videos were sent. They convince you your life is over if you don't pay, she says. But if you pay, they're just going to ask you for more money. You shouldn't. William's story is one of a growing number of sextortion cases across Canada. In New Brunswick, RCMP have received 66 reports since 2023. 43 of those are since January. That spike is also being reported here at Canada's national tip line for online exploitation of children. Cybertip.ca is getting 10 reports per day.
These extorter groups are relentless.
The center's senior manager says criminals are using everything from social media to even online games to target kids.
We are now seeing a lot of tactics being used towards threats to harm the child, threats to harm their family members. And again, that relentless messaging that kids are receiving is just continuing to escalate their response to that. The onus really doesn't fall on parents in these circumstances. We really need platforms to start stepping up. They're providing access to these platforms to kids. They are purposely drawing kids onto their platforms and aren't really doing much to help protect them.
Stéphanie Thériault says she's speaking out to try to prevent a similar tragedy. It could happen to anyone, she says. Even if it happens, you'll get past it. Your life isn't over. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Moncton.
They're calling it a catastrophic loss. Grape growers in BC say a severe cold snap has destroyed this summer's harvest. What that means for winemaking in the region after the break. Grape growers in BC's Okanagan Valley are bracing for the worst after a severe cold snap in January. The damage and their loss could be devastating. The CBC's Brady Strachan reports.
You can see the cracking.
The prognosis is grim. Severe winter damage in vineyards across the Okanagan. Gordon Fitzpatrick's vines at his winery near Summerland were not spared.
And taking this wood and spur pruning that, and then so we're kind of hedging our bets, right? And see what pushes.
An extreme cold snap in January is the culprit. Temperatures dropped below minus 25 degrees right across the Okanagan and killed off many of the buds that would have been this year's wine grape crop.
Damage is substantial, greater than 90%. So both the primary and secondary buds, most of them are dead, they're discolored. And so that has everybody worried about what's going to happen in the spring and how many tons are we going to have in the vineyards up and down the Okanagan Valley.
The low temperature, and you can see it got down to minus 30, but more.
A new report by the BC wine industry predicts catastrophic crop loss this year across the valley, with only 3% of a normal harvest. This on the heels of last year's severe season that saw only half the expected harvest.
Well, back-to-back and consecutively like that is the perfect storm. So it's worrisome. I think it just speaks to the challenges of climate change.
And with little or no grapes expected this year, the industry is projecting substantial losses across the board.
Yeah, well, without that crop, it looks as though it could be up to almost $500 million. And so that's just the impact of wages and, again, tourism. And tourism means hotel stays and restaurants.
The province has already invested millions of dollars in a replant program for grape growers. Some in the industry are asking for help in the short term.
Wineries are going to be running out of wine. So there's been some discussions about, well, can we, on an emergency basis, outsource from other regions such as Ontario or Washington State, Oregon.
That is something not currently allowed for wines carrying the VQA designation and would require governments to make significant regulatory changes. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Summerland.
Let's check in once again with weather specialist Ethan Williams.
Well, Janet, as I mentioned earlier, we're about to head into a night here where temperatures are below minus 20 in much of the province. And, you know, it's been a while, especially for southern Manitoba, since we have seen temperatures like that overnight. In fact, the last time that we were at minus 20 overnight in Barons River was on January 23rd. You have to go back to January 20th in Brandon and Dauphin. And it's been almost a month in Winnipeg since we were below minus 20 at night. That was on January 19th. We got down to minus 27. And our overnight temperatures in northwestern Ontario likely going to drop below that minus 20 mark as well. Could get close to minus 25 in a place like Red Lake. And we're looking for right around minus 20 in Fort Francis and Kenora, looking for partly cloudy skies for many of those locations overnight tonight. Partly cloudy overnight in many areas of the Red River Valley and southeastern Manitoba, but again dropping into the minus 20s. If you're in Barons River and portions of the Inner Lake, that'll be in between minus 25 to minus 30. And keep in mind, with a little bit of wind, a lot of these locations, even into southwestern Manitoba, likely going to be feeling close to or into the minus 30s with the wind chill. But again, snow not really an issue here like we saw a couple of nights ago. We're looking at mostly clear skies, especially in the north where we're still seeing those temperatures very cold at times, closer to the Hudson Bay coast. That is feeling closer to minus 40 with a little bit of wind. But we do get a pretty nice warm up heading into tomorrow, or at least starting to see things improve here and there, getting into minus single digits in places like Flin Flon and the Paw. Likely still going to be into the minus double digits in between roughly minus 10 to minus 15 as you head eastward throughout northern Manitoba, with some lingering snow showers as that system starts to move through. For southwestern Manitoba, likely breaking the minus 10 mark. Still going to be seeing some cloud cover, though, at times in Brandon and toward Portage along the number 1 highway. As we get into Winnipeg and much of the rest of southern Manitoba, it'll be tough for us to jump above minus 10. again, we'll kind of be seeing temperatures similar to what we've seen today. And keep in mind, for Winnipeg, we start to see those winds pick up a little bit as we head into the afternoon, especially closer to the afternoon commute, probably close to around 40 kilometers an hour or so. For northwestern Ontario, looking for temperatures in between about -10 to -15, and again, some increasing cloudiness, but some breaks of sun as you go a little bit further eastward. I'll have a look at your full 7-day forecast for Winnipeg, Janet, coming up.
Thanks, Ethan. Atlanta, Canada has had 2 multi-day snowstorms in less than 2 weeks. It's left people in parts of Nova Scotia sick of shoveling and snowplow crews doing their very best to keep roadways clear. But what about those big snowbanks left behind? As CBC's Aaron Potty reports, they've created a new and unexpected hazard.
People online are sharing pictures and videos of animals walking in the middle of plowed roads. Like humans, they're finding it difficult to navigate after record-breaking snowfall last week. Lyle Donovan is EMO coordinator for Victoria County.
We don't want to hurt the wildlife, but first and foremost, we don't want anybody to get hurt or injured or damage any vehicles or anything like that. So
Donovan encountered a mother moose and possibly her baby last week. He says the pair were exhausted, and it's not just large animals making their way onto roadways.
Coyotes, I've seen encountered myself, but I'm hearing from other people around the municipality as well. They're encountering wildlife as well. So
the snowbanks are making it difficult for animals to cross into the woods and for drivers to see around those snowbanks. Department of Natural Resources in Cape Breton says drivers should take caution and be aware that deer and moose are most active at dusk and dawn.
And even simple things as making sure that your vehicle is winter ready, that it has good quality tires that are properly inflated, can actually help with your ability to stop properly.
Natural Resources says to also note that deer often travel in herds and to remember that moose will sometimes chase vehicles. Walsh says it's important for drivers to maintain a safe distance. Aaron Potty, CBC News, Sydney.
In Winnipeg, he's best known as the guy with the bullhorn at the Meet Me at the Bell Tower gatherings. In a chat we recorded earlier today, Michael Redhead Champagne told me why he wanted to find a new way to amplify his voice. The difference he hopes a children's book will make. Next. Many Manitobans first heard the name Michael Redhead Champagne in media coverage of community gatherings in Winnipeg's North End. Meet Me at the Bell Tower, it was called. Michael was the young man there with the bullhorn, talking to everyone about safety and hope and community. More than 12 years later, Michael is using his voice in a different way. He's written a book for children, and he joins us now to talk about it. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Janet. Thanks for having me.
Why did you want to reach out with children, to children, with this book?
Well, a lot of the stuff that I do in community talks about the importance of us finding and sharing our gifts. And I feel like there are some kids that grow up for a period of time without knowing what their gift is. And this causes some distress and mental health challenges for some folks. And I really wanted to go as early as possible so that we could try to improve and celebrate the gifts, improve the mental health and celebrate the gifts of kids.
That's cool, because as I read it, it's a self-help book for kids. It's about self-esteem.
It is, and the book is intended to be two different things. One is it's intended to be an instruction manual, so there's a step 1, 2, 3 process on how to find and share your gift. But then the other part is the celebration, where we celebrate a number of common gifts, or maybe even unusual gifts that we see in the community, so that kids can see examples of folks achieving.
You dedicate We Need Everyone to the North End of Winnipeg. You say the North End, that's of course where your activism began. The North End who raised me to be the person I am today, you write, and to all the teachers who shine their light in the darkest places. How did the North End help you find your gifts?
The North End helped me find my gifts because there are extremely dedicated educators that are committed to the students in the North End. So shout out to all the teachers and educators in the neighborhood. Those committed folks work every single day to try to support and love the children here in the North End of Winnipeg so that they can improve their educational outcomes and, of course, improve their wellness and self-esteem. And so knowing that those teachers are out there every single day, including today, is such an inspiration to me. And this book is really my love letter to those teachers who shine their lights in the darkest places and continue to believe in kids when sometimes it feels like the rest of the world does not.
You're spending this I Love to Read month reading to a lot of kids, reading this book to them. What kind of reaction are you receiving?
I am receiving a very strong reaction from kids across the North End and across Winnipeg, and even as far north as Thompson, being able to share this book with them during I Love to Read month. Kids are very excited, not only when they see their own gift represented in the book. I also have included my own real-life cat, Sushi, in the book, and so he makes an appearance, and the kids seem to really enjoy Sushi the cat.
Kids' books, of course, are famous for their illustrations. Tiff Bartel has worked with you on this. How was that experience?
It was a seamless experience. Tiff Bartel is a legendary artist who was able to really take my energy, which is a little bit much sometimes, and capture it on the flat page. And so the way she was able to take that energy of not only myself, but all of the diverse characters in the book, and just put that onto a flat page really is a testament to how gifted artists and illustrators can be.
Well, Michael Redhead Champagne, thank you for sharing your gifts with this province for the last 13 years, and good luck with the book.
Thank you so much. Our book launch is this Saturday at the Manitoba Museum at 2 p.m.
Your 7-day forecast and daily lift are still to come. Stay with us.
Well, a bit of a chillier day once again. Tomorrow just below average for the Winnipeg area, but things improving as we see a little bit of cloud cover heading into Saturday and some breezy northwest winds sticking around. For the rest of the holiday weekend, actually not too bad. Some sunshine and above seasonal temperatures. Chance of flurries as we get into early next week to start the next work week if you happen to have Monday off. And then still staying above seasonal, Janet, as we head through the rest of the week.
Thank you, Ethan Williams. You know, pandas have long been the face of species conservation. And we often joke around here that we make panda videos the daily lift too often. They're just so cute. Well, now a new creature seems to be mimicking a panda's iconic look. Here is tonight's Daily Lift. These critters are called skeleton panda sea squirts. Did you hear that? Skeleton panda sea squirts. They're only about 2 centimeters long, part of a newly classified species discovered a few years ago near the Japanese island of Kumejima. The white parts that look like skeletons, like something director Tim Burton would have designed for The Nightmare Before Christmas, those are blood vessels. Scientists don't yet know what those little black patterns are that make them look panda-like and attractive to the fish they hide from. Oh, don't eat the tiny pandas. Don't eat the tiny... Thank you for being with us this evening. Hope you have a great night. Tomorrow is Friday. Yay, you've made it through the week almost. Join us tonight at 11.